Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most disgusting displays at a committee hearing, at least in my opinion, in regards to decorum and sensitivity towards the witnesses, as an emergency meeting was held yesterday for the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. And as they give in the video, I will as well. There's a bit of a trigger warning as the topic at hand is violence against women, in particularly perpetrated by men. Now, you would think this would be a very nonpartisan issue, cut and dry. People come, the committee listens to them, asks their questions, and then that's that. However, the liberal NDP decide to derail this kind of situation and make it all really about them. And again, you can watch it for yourself. These clips that I'm going to be playing are a little bit lengthy. Some of them are 6-8 minutes long, and I'll interject every once in a while, but just take a look as we start.
At this point, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is meeting to hear testimony related to the committee's core mandate, more specifically about the impacts of violent crime against women. Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to acknowledge and provide this trigger warning. We will be discussing experiences related to violence against women. This may be triggering to viewers with similar experiences. If at any point you feel distressed or need help, please advise the clerk. For all the witnesses and for all members of Parliament, it is very important to recognize that these are very difficult discussions. So let's continue to try and be as compassionate as we can. I would like now to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, we have Kate Alexander, founder of End Violence Everywhere. We also have Megan Walker in the room, advocate to end male violence against women. From the Peel Regional Police, we have Nick Milinovich, Deputy Chief of Police, joining us by video conference. At this point, I will give the floor to Miss Alexander to start. You have 5 minutes.
Fortunate to be here today. I'm supposed to be dead. On July 31st, 2021, exactly 3 years ago today, I sent the 2-word WhatsApp message, "Please help," to a friend who thankfully believed me. My ex was beating me. All 6'3", approximately 250 pounds of him, because he couldn't find his car keys. For 4 hours, with his fists, his feet, a wooden rolling pin, door wells, he split my head open in 3 places, gouged my eyes out with his thumbs, kicked my ribs, and tortured me in ways I can feel but can't fully describe. I do not know how my body survived it. My ex enjoyed what he did to me. He threatened to kill my family. The police were going to leave me for dead, but my former neighbor intervened. And after all that, guess what your criminal and justice system gave me? A peace bond. All 8 charges, 5 in the provincial and 3 in the federal, were stayed against my ex. And I can't say his name because it will forever be known as alleged abuse. I ask of you exactly what I asked Justice Himmel, who had the tears in her eyes on March 26, 2024, when I received the peace bond. Why does he abuse, and why is he allowed to get away with it? He abuses because he is publicly and personally rewarded for it, and he is allowed to get away with it because you, the government of Canada, lets him. Abuse is a choice, a moral failing, and it is also inexcusable. Even 3 years later, my ex is still abusing me. I am suing him as the only form of legal justice I have left, and he has put in a meritless counterclaim as a continuation of abuse against me. He states I was self-injurious and I stole his Rolex after. He is lying under oath. But these issues have been plaguing people everywhere across the nation for so long in the dark corners. But now we are in the light. We will shine until there is retribution. We will break the stigmas down into the nothingness that they are. There are no stereotypical victims. There are only stereotypical abusers. IPV and SA happens in all cultures, all socioeconomic statuses, races, ages, genders, but so predominantly with women and children. Today is not about me. Today is about us. and what this means going forward. And I want to state from a survivor's perspective, Trudeau doesn't care, Ford doesn't care, Arif doesn't care, and the government doesn't care. The government doesn't care about Courtney Goudreau, who faced potential charges and jail time for speaking the name of her convicted abuser when a publication ban was implemented without her consent. The government doesn't care about Brian and Suzanne Sweeney, whose daughter Angie was shot to death along with 3 innocent children. Brett and Jessica Broadfoot, whose daughter was stabbed to death 2 weeks ago at age 17, leaving behind her absolutely incredible 15-year-old brother Lucas. The government doesn't care about Melanie Hatton, who fled BC to Ontario after nearly being murdered by her ex-partner. She suffers long-term traumatic brain injury and still lives in fear daily with her 2 children, and now owes $300,000 to the CRA because her ex bankrupted her.
Now, Kate uses the rest of her time there to talk about multiple cases of this violence against women. And I'll leave a link to the full video if you do want to watch it. It's about an hour and a half. But her opening statement is very powerful. You see the photos of what she had to go through. Very surprised she survived, as she stated. And I found it interesting how she said Trudeau doesn't care, Doug Ford doesn't care, and Minister Varani doesn't care, as the government has implemented all of these new catch and release rules, or soft on crime policies, as we've been hearing for the past few years. Especially Pierre hammers in on that. And one of the cases she mentions there that we just finished covering, Brianna Broadfoot, the 17-year-old who was murdered by the 18-year-old that had already been found guilty of assaulting her and trying to strangle her, was just given a little restraining order, essentially, and then came back and killed this poor girl. These are all things that the government should be a little bit harder on. But we're going to move to now the next witness and just listen to this brief little explanation from her.
I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Walker. You now have 5 minutes, Ms. Walker.
Thank you so much. As you have just heard, the situation for women and girls in Canada is dire. Women and girls have been erased by government policies. Terms like gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, and domestic violence fail to differentiate between victim and offender. According to the UN, male violence against women and girls is the most pervasive human rights abuse in the world. Yet the language used by many governments, including Canada, fail to name it as male violence against women and girls.
And this is a point I've tried to bring up before in the past, which YouTube always suppresses you when you try to talk about this. When you don't even have a government who can define what a woman is, and they just say it is whatever it is, whoever feels like a woman is a woman, that becomes a huge problem. As there was the case earlier this year that I covered about the assault that happened in Vancouver on the metro train. A male who thinks he's a woman attacked an individual, a female individual. They have evidence that it's a male, semen at the scene of the crime from the assault, yet the police could not announce that it was a man who attacked the woman. They didn't want to get their pronouns incorrect. And if you don't believe me, here's a little clip from that.
Hi, my name is Amy Ham. I'm a journalist, and I just saw a press release about an assault on Surrey SkyTrain last August.
Yeah.
I'm just calling to get any more information that you have. First, I was wondering if the suspect is a male or a female.
I've gotten this question quite a few times, and we've left it out for a reason. Is because we don't know.
Okay.
The video evidence shows someone who is who would appear female, who is female presenting, but the physical evidence is that of a genetic male.
The physical, does that mean like this person was assaulted and raped with a penis, or?
The suspect, we believe, does have a penis. Because of the DNA evidence that was recovered. But the video shows someone who appears to be female presenting. So that's why we left the gender out, because we weren't really sure how this person identifies, and we didn't want to get it wrong.
Okay. Is there any information that you could share with me that's not in the press release?
So the investigation is quite complicated, and we've omitted some of the evidence to preserve the integrity of that investigation when it does go to court. So that's why we've withheld that information.
Okay.
So I would love to give you every detail, but I simply can't.
So yeah, I'm not surprised that she's finding it difficult to have the proper definitions when, again, our government can't even tell you what a woman actually is. But now we're going to be getting into the questions from the committee, and Michelle Ferrari starts off.
At this point, I would like to welcome Michelle for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. Extremely powerful testimony. To call this a crisis is an understatement, and the connection between each of your testimonies is profound. Kate, I know you wanted to finish and say a few more things, but what jumped off the page of me, what you said, above all of the horrific things, calling it alleged, and you have all of those photos of your assault, publicly and personally rewarded for it. Those are your words of your attacker. Can you expand on what you mean by that legally in Canada?
Thank you for the question. Abusers don't think in the same way that the average person does, and which is why they are able to commit the offenses that you or I wouldn't commit. Abusers get off on the reward of being allowed to commit these offenses. I have video taken of my ex and his enjoyment of what he did to me, and knowing that the government said, well, this isn't a big deal. And I will quote the Crown Attorney, "We don't have time for this." So he is publicly rewarded because he feels like he is above the law. He is personally rewarded because he is 6'3" and 250 pounds. He can push me around no matter if I had a black belt or otherwise. He has a son who is in his care, and this was overlooked. There is an open case with CPS. Nothing was done. The federal ombudsperson has called on our behalf. Nothing was done. So his rewards are he gets to operate however he chooses to. There are no consequences for his actions, and I guarantee you if he is not stopped, he will be a part of the homicide statistics. He will kill someone. He came damn close to it with me on this day.
The irony of it being on this day, and then your testimony today, and I know you flew a long way to testify here today, and I know your parents are also here, and I think one of the things that we don't address is the impact on families and children as well, and I know Deputy Chief talked about this, and I guess what I'm trying to get at the heart of this in this meeting is what changes do we have to do? And you were poignant in saying you have a Canadian passport, but you don't feel safe in this country. And I guess, you know, we have a letter from the premiers, all premiers across this country asking for bail reform. And, you know, you're saying you don't feel safe. It's a publication ban without consent. And to Deputy Chief's point, you have a blatant disregard. So you can see the connection between Kate's testimony and the Deputy Chief's testimony. So if I could go to the Deputy Chief and say, what needs to be done federally? And to Ms. Walker's point, if the money was being spent the way that it's saying it's being spent, we wouldn't see an increase. We would see a decrease. And yet we have the worst numbers we've ever seen. So if I could get the Deputy Chief on record saying what needs to be done, do you agree with this bail reform letter that the premiers have signed, and how much of this can be reversed in policy federally?
Let me first say, really appreciate the question, and I really want to commend everybody that has come here during this meeting, particularly survivors that are sharing their stories. You know, I do agree with the need to create some change, and, you know, the question was very direct. What can be done? And the answer is going to be also very direct and very simple. What we need to begin doing is reprioritize the consideration for victims and survivors in a way that allows them to feel safe in their communities. And at its most basic, we've heard testimony today, and I've spoken to survivors myself, had multiple conversations of people who unfortunately have been targeted or who have experienced similar scenarios. And the reality is they don't feel safe and they don't feel supported by our current system. And so, when a person does build up the courage to notify police who's supposed to protect them, we go and we arrest that person and we charge them. And the idea is that results in that person no longer being a threat. The reality is, from the statistics we've seen and like currently what we're experiencing, is it's quite probable that that person will continue to be a threat to the survivor, the person who's built up the courage in order to engage police. And, at its basic level, that is what needs to change.
Thank you. And I have such limited time, and this is such a big topic, but I think we have to get to the nuts and bolts of it. And I think when we have two bills, C5 and C75, I guess just a yes or no answer from you, Deputy. Are these bills, and Kate said it beautifully, nobody seems to care, but these are policies that if were changed tomorrow, would this give you more freedom to be able to keep people who are at risk of public safety, of hurting more people?
Yeah, we will, definitely it is. We will continue to take advantage of every opportunity and every change we made. And I want to be clear, this is not me advocating. Well, of course, I'm here. I'm wearing a police uniform and I'm representing Peel Police. But I am really representing my community who is not feeling as though the current system is supporting them and considering their interests in the way they feel and the victimization. So contemporarily, it's not working for our community, and we need to make change. We need to begin looking at issues such as bail, the prevalence of illegal firearms, prioritization of the issues for our community like gender-based violence, human trafficking, and those types of things.
Now, first off, that Crown Attorney definitely needs to lose their job if that's what they told Kate, that we don't have time for this. But Michelle's questions were great in my opinion, very straightforward. Seems like she was getting to as she said, the nuts and bolts of the whole situation. She asked, what can the federal government do if maybe changing certain bills will help, especially with the policing? And the officer from Peel there said, yeah, this catch and release system, not good. The bail reform or bail system, not good. The people in our community are saying how they don't believe in the justice system. So clearly something needs to be addressed in regards to the bills. And I think Michelle did a fair point of bringing these up and asking if there's anything the federal government should be looking at, because they're the ones who have implemented certain laws which are affecting these cases. Yet this Liberal member does not like that, and she decides to go onto the attack.
And I want to thank the witnesses for coming here and for your incredible testimony. And I want to reassure you, both of you, but especially Kate, because you said that you don't believe that any of us care. And I want to reassure you very much that all of us on this committee care very deeply. It's why we've done so many studies on intimate partner violence. We've had testimony like yours that is very difficult to hear, but has been very, very important to put recommendations. And we believe you, and we believe others like you. And our government has put many, many measures to try to make sure that the things that happen to you don't happen to others. Numerous bills, Bill C-51 on amending sexual assault laws, C-75 on bail reforms, C-48 now that targets repeat offenders of intimate partner violence, C-28 on intoxication not being used as a defense, C-63 on online harms. We have a national action plan on gender-based violence that has been signed by all the provinces, and we've put $539 million in budget 2022 behind that, something that the Conservatives actually voted against. So I want to start everything that I say by saying that if anyone tries to say that there's anyone in this room who doesn't care about this issue, I think that they are playing partisan games, because people in this room have spent our lives fighting on this issue, listening to that kind of testimony, and I just want to reassure you of that.
And so here's where things start to get derailed because, as you heard from Michelle, she never once said the liberal NDP or the whatever. She just said the federal government. This lady has now brought up the conservatives in particular. She rattles off all these bills, then she tries to point out how the conservatives voted against certain things, yet wants you to know that we do care and we appreciate you listening. However, from here on in, this just becomes a complete shit show. She's the one to blame. She puts forward a vote for absolutely no reason on another topic that they talked about over 2 years ago. She's going to state that she wants to continue talking about something from 2022. And it's just mind blowing. Take a look.
I also do, with respect, want to talk a little bit about how this meeting came about. We have had studies that we've all agreed on to talk about these issues. In fact, we're in the middle of a study right now on coercive control, which we have put a number of witnesses that we'd like to hear from as a committee. But we know that the Leader of the Opposition has asked Conservative chaired committees to hold as many meetings as possible during the summer to take us away from the important work that we're doing listening to our constituents. And we also know that in this case, it was a few days' notice. We were not given, any of the members except Conservatives, the opportunity to put forth witness names, which is something that every committee does just out of basic fairness and respect. And I personally would have had a number of witness names that I would have loved to have heard from. In fact, there were witness names added an hour before the meeting so that members didn't even have a chance to plan or prepare what kind of questions we might want to ask. I know that for this committee, this is something we've never done. We do not use victims and survivors' trauma to try to score political points in this committee. This is cruel. I think it's cruel to have people relive the trauma that they've endured just to be able to have a meeting so that if it's not agreed to, then there's all kinds of social media that, liberals or others don't care about this issue, which, as we all know, we do very deeply. So I know that under the previous chair, this committee worked with great respect for one another. We made sure that the vice chairs weren't even consulted about having this meeting. Yes, it's an emergency. I would have loved to have had an emergency meeting in June so we could have gotten our red dress alert study done before the end of the session. And honestly, we saw yesterday that Karen Vecchio, our former chair, announced she's not running again, which I think is very sad because I believe that this committee has important work to do. And we have done it with great. I have the
to
floor,
actually say all of the points.
Currently, Anita has the floor.
Madam Chair, I would like to move a motion. And the reason I'm moving a motion is because in this committee we've respected each other. There are very important issues that we have said we've adjourned debate.
Is the most important issue we can address.
Debate, and I'm hoping that the committee could vote quickly on this motion, hopefully unanimously, so that we can quickly go back to the study, the witnesses that we have today. If we vote right away, it'll only take 5 minutes. But I would like to resume debate on the motion that we adjourned debate on May 13th, 2022. And the motion reads that the Standing Committee on the Status of Women report to the House that A, access and availability to reproductive health services, no matter where one lives in Canada, including safe and legal abortion, is a charter right and is ensured under the Canada Health Act. And B, the decision to have an abortion made by women, transgender, and non-binary individuals for any reason is their freedom of choice and theirs alone. So, Madam Chair, we have refrained from putting motions like this because of collegiality. But at this moment, we're not, and I hope we can do a vote immediately on this motion, and therefore we can get back to our witnesses right away, and we'll only lose 5 minutes in this meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Like, what the actual fuck was that? We're talking about violence against women, and this lady decides to bring up abortion which has no relevance to what they're talking about here. And again, she says this is a talking point that they brought up back in May of 2022 at the last committee hearing. What relevance does this have with the witnesses that are here that are talking about domestic violence and violence against women? That has nothing to do with this. And she's saying it's only going to take 5 minutes if we vote on this. Let's get the vote in fast. But for what? To then talk about abortion when the witnesses are here to talk about something else? It makes no sense. She completely derails this whole thing. And of course, the liberal NDPs, they get together and they outvote the conservatives. So I think it's a 6-4 vote. So now they have to move from the topic that they had these witnesses come in to talk about to now talking about abortion. And as I said, this continues to get worse and worse as now the NDP just makes it about themselves, especially this Indigenous member, Leah Gazan. She constantly just says, I want to talk, I want to talk, how come I don't get to talk? And just continues to stall the hearing.
Six yeas, 4 nays.
Okay, so at this point, we'll resume debate on your motion. Michelle.
Thanks. So,
sorry. Madam Chair, I'd like to speak on the motion.
Okay, I'll add your name to the speaking list.
thank you, Madam Chair. So what people are watching at home right now is we have a debate on the floor. We've called an emergency meeting because Stats Canada released shocking statistics. We've seen an increase 75% in sexual assault since 2015. Total sexual violations against children up 119%.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Point of order, Madam Chair. Miss Gazan hai.
I can't hear you, Sonia.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Miss Gazan had her hand up and wanted to speak first. She indicated early that she wants to speak, and the chance is not given to her. Can she speak first?
I've currently given the chair to MP Ferrari. I've noticed that MP Gazan has her hand up, and I acknowledge that she'll have the floor next.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Certainly.
I had my hand up before. In the history of this committee, we have done things in fairness. I am devastated by the way this meeting is being handled today. I would like us to be collegial. I had my hand up. I would like that to be recognized. This is a very, very harmful meeting for everybody, and I would like my hand to be recognized. With all due respect, Chair. Thank you.
In absolute fairness, I did not see your hand. I now have once it was acknowledged, and I'll have you on the floor as soon as Michelle is finished.
Madam Chair, I had my hand up. It was, with all due fairness, point of order. I had my hand up. I was told that I had to wait till after the vote. It was acknowledged by you. Everybody saw it in the committee. I would like my turn to speak now, Madam Chair, with all due respect. Thank you.
I did acknowledge your hand during the vote. With reference to this debate, I did acknowledge Michelle first, and you will speak second. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chair. We all saw that Ms. Gazan has hand up even before vote, after vote, and everyone saw that. And please be fair with her.
Indeed, I am being fair. I saw and acknowledged her hand up during the vote. I needn't explain myself. What will happen is Michelle will speak, and then as soon as she is finished, then Madame Gazan will happily have the floor.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair. As somebody who has spent their life fighting around issues around violence against women, I find this deeply troubling that my hand was up. It is not being acknowledged. We are talking about a committee where we're supposed to behave in a democratic manner. Certainly, the Canadian public expects us to behave in a democratic manner. And I would like my turn to speak with all due respect, Chair. that we follow rules, as has always happened in this committee, certainly under our former chair, who has indicated she is not running. I would like my opportunity to speak. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gazan. I own and I acknowledge that I saw your hand during the vote. At that point, once the debate started, I did pass the floor to MP Ferrari. As soon as she is done, the floor will return to you.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
On the same point of order?
A point of order.
Leah?
As the fact that there's not even an Indigenous person on the panel today, when we are experiencing the highest rates of violence, did not get a chance to put in witnesses when we just convicted a serial killer in my community for killing 4 women is deeply troubling to me. Now the fact that my voice is being silenced in the committee after not having an opportunity to put in witnesses is deeply offensive, deeply violent, and deeply troubling. I had my hand up. I would like an opportunity to interject, Madam Chair, with all due respect. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just like to say that I'm in the room, and I saw Leah's hand go up before Michelle indicated that she wanted to speak.
With all due respect, had we just continued on, we would have had both of you speak by now, and with the time we've allowed for this conversation. I do understand completely, Leah, your frustration, and my sense of fairness is not being tested here. I saw your hand, and at this point, Ms. Ferrari has the floor.
Point of order.
Who's doing point?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to challenge your ruling. I see you've made your ruling, but I disagree with it. So I'd like to challenge the ruling of the chair at this time.
So then we go to a vote? Okay, so at this point, if I have a challenge to the chair, then we go to a vote to direct how we would like to proceed.
There's just no words for what we just witnessed there. The chair makes a very valid point. If this woman just shut up, let Michelle go and ask her question or say what she needed to say, we probably would have heard her, Miss Gazan, another member. Who knows how many people we could have heard by now. But the fact that all these Liberal and NDPs continuously just kept jumping down the chair's throat, cutting her off, saying, no, her hand was up, her hand was up. She says, I acknowledge your hand. Michelle will finish, then you will talk. Well, no, if you don't let me talk, it's violence. You didn't let us have any witnesses, any non-binary, LGBTQ, Indigenous. It's like, what relevance is that if now we have changed the topic from violence against women, who I do agree, there's a lot of violence against Indigenous women, but you've now switched it to abortion. So what relevance is you talking about you not being able to bring any witnesses over? And then you have that knucklehead Atwin come in and say, oh, and I want to challenge the chair's decision, which then goes to another vote. And of course, the Liberal NDPs outnumber the Conservatives and the Bloc member there. So they get their way again. Now they force the chair to stop addressing Ferrari, go back to Gazan, when all of this is taking way more time than just having let Michelle finish what she had to say. You can see Kate is not even sitting in her seat, the witness, and Megan Walker, the other witness, is there just like, looks like she's ready to pull her hair out. What's even more shocking is what the witnesses decide to do. Because this vote goes through, it now switches back to Gazan. This lady just makes it all about herself. She doesn't even stay on topic of what they've now switched it to. She just wants to hear herself talk. And again, look at what the witnesses do. They decide to protest during this this committee hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm glad, just before I start, that we were able to resolve this. You know, because collegiality has been something, as you know, I have
Point of
bragged
order.
about in committee.
Point of order.
We have a point of order, Leah. Anna, what's your point of
sure.
order?
I'm really disgusted in this whole day, and I want to apologize to the two witnesses for coming all this distance to help us solve a problem that women in this country are being killed and the other parties don't care. I'm disgusted. We need to be talking about this issue so that we can stop.
Yeah. This is not a active point of order, so at this point, Leah, if you could continue.
Yeah, so I'm disgusted because I wasn't given a chance to put forward witnesses when I'm representing ground zero of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. I could have called the families of loved ones who just lost their loved ones to serial killers in my riding down the street from where I live. Not one Indigenous woman, not one trans woman was asked. It was not done in a thoughtful way. It's a way of silencing voices. And I do not accept that. Getting back to the motion.
Now, this is a prime example of somebody who cannot read the room. You have the witnesses with their backs turned to the committee. Whatever you're doing is not helping your cause, especially for you espousing how you're at ground zero for violence against women, even though you've now switched the topic to abortion. Remember that you voted on that. And going on about how you didn't get to bring any Indigenous witnesses or trans women for whatever reason you brought that up. And it continues to get worse and worse because as she continues talking, she now starts attacking the conservatives and bringing up Jamil Javani and how he's friends with Donald Trump's vice president running mate. And something you don't see on Parlez-Vous is Kate gets up, leaves, and cusses out the committee. You do see Mrs. Walker, however, address them and tell them she is never coming back to this committee hearing. And they just tell her, sorry, we don't have time to actually fit you in, and your mic is not even working.
This is about protecting women and diverse gendered folks from state control over our bodies. This is about protecting women from violence that is perpetrated by male conservative members, including MP Jamil Javani, who's best friends with Trump's running mate, JD Vance, from Yale Law School. Javani was previously dismissed by Bell Media for misgendering a public figure. Among other reasons, Javani's best friend, Vance, has been quoted saying that women should stay in abusive marriages, that getting a divorce is
Point of order.
easy, and that career-oriented women are more
Point of order.
We have a point of order on the table.
than women need to be.
We have a point of order.
Relevance to the motion.
Relevance to the motion. Absolutely, it is relevant to the motion. It is about a constant attack on women.
All of my years
by the
in advocating
Conservative
for
Party.
women. We are leaving. We will not ever have...
Madam Chair, or sorry, your mic is not on, and no one. And at this point, we don't have space to acknowledge in this space right now.
I want to acknowledge the witnesses, Madam Speaker, because I'm the one.
The witnesses are no longer in the room.
Okay.
Can I adjourn the meeting?
And that sigh from Shelby is something I'm sure all of us are feeling, and she should have adjourned the meeting right then and there. But now I'm going to play you the clip from City News, which shows Kate leaving and cussing them out, and their views on this whole committee and this situation.
Shame on you. I'm done.
This is about protecting women.
Can't do this anymore. No wonder nothing gets done in this country.
Over our bodies.
Shame on you.
Survivors of gender-based violence and advocates for women storm out of the Status of Women Committee after MPs vote to debate abortion instead of listening to them. Megan Walker, a longtime advocate for women, says she's never seen anything like this, and if Liberals wanted to pick their own witnesses, they could vote for more meetings instead of derailing this one. She was especially critical of Vandenbeld.
She has betrayed women and girls across this country who are hopeful that one day there will be change. One day they will not have to walk through their communities in fear. One day they will be considered to be human beings instead of objects.
Kate Alexander was to testify 3 years to the day after she was brutally assaulted by an ex-partner, suffering wounds so severe she feared she wouldn't survive. The charges against him were stayed due to the time it took to go to trial.
I said in my testimony, this government doesn't care, and she literally proved my point with hypocritical partisan nonsense. And these issues are nonpartisan. It is a human rights issue, and I've stated this over and over again.
And these women are completely right. This was a complete shit show. No wonder nothing ever really happens in the government. We see this all the time when the filibustering or just point of order. Like, this was so nonsensical. It didn't make... There was no reason for this. And as I'm just going to let the rest of these clips play and the video with that, Michelle makes a valid point, and you heard it from Megan Walker herself, saying if you want to bring your own witnesses in, have more of these meetings. This doesn't have to be the end-all be-all of the meetings. Yes, they're there right now to represent all of women, but that doesn't mean you can't have more committee hearings where, say, you have a full panel of Indigenous witnesses or other women from different ilks. Like, it doesn't need to be, oh, well, I didn't get an invitation to invite my own witnesses, so now I just have to ruin everyone's party. And like I said, I'm just going to let the rest of these clips play. The member from the block actually gives a very nice speech at the end. But as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Leah, you still have the... Leah?
This is about collegiality. This is about using
point of order, Madam Chair.
For a political agenda.
Collegiality is
this
point of order. Leah, we have a point of order. Leah, we have a point of order.
The witnesses have left status of women, and if we are collegial, I just think if we are focusing on women here to resume here, they've actually turned their back and they've left. They were here to represent all women, which is what this committee is for. And the staggering stats that were recently released, and that is what's happened. And we need to get back to this. We need to get back to this testimony if we're going to help women in this country. And so I think you are 100% right. And I think that is why we need to extend these meetings. And I'm going to put forward a motion. And I just, on behalf of the entire committee, and again, I will reiterate this to Kate's mom, who's standing here, who's had to witness her daughter leave in tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Sorry isn't good enough.
I agree.
We've heard sorry.
I agree.
A lot.
Okay.
Agree. I would like to put forward a motion. This has to go further than status of women, but I'm going to put forward this motion today. Given testimony heard today that the Standing Committee on the Status of Women hold 4 more meetings on the impacts of violent crime against women and reports to the House. And that is what I would suggest. It is merely to hear more from victims, and in the spirit of my colleagues' notes, let's do this. Obviously, this is heated. Obviously, this is a serious issue. But to put forward a motion in the middle of victim testimony about abortion,
doesn't make sense.
So,
okay, so there currently is a motion on the floor, the original one, so we can't pass a second motion until the original motion is dealt with.
Point of order.
A motion on the table. I'll entertain your thoughts quickly.
Tout le monde s'est exprimé jusqu'à... Everyone was able to speak, so I would like to also be able to speak with my point of order. I am so disappointed by what happened at the Status of Women today. In a newspaper article, I talked about mud throwing between the party in power and the opposition. I said to journalists that I had seen many committees become political and they were no longer serving their causes. I recently sat in at the Health Committee, which also became political, as did Public Safety. Same thing at Foreign Affairs. because of partisanship, things are no longer moving forward. And the same thing is now happening at the Status of Women Committee. You all fell into this trap, and we have made this issue of violence against women political. It is very disappointing.
Il y a des témoins.
Witnesses left the room crying. I've been here since I was elected in 2019, and I have never seen anything like this. The Status of Women Committee was called in 2020 to examine the impact of the pandemic on women. I came to do the work in 2020. I came back in 2022 because there was a meeting on women in sports. We sat in the summer. Regardless of the importance of those issues, we were able to move forward. I came here and witnesses left crying, and I've never seen this before. And seeing how this committee is carrying on, I've never seen that either. I am so disheartened to see that the Status of Women Committee, that up until now was very proud of not falling into the trap of partisanship. And I was hoping that my committee would not fall into this trap. Women cannot become tools for political games, and that's what's happening. And so I needed to speak my mind because everyone else has done so. That is my point of order, and I'm so disappointed by what happened today. Nobody wins after a meeting like this one. And unfortunately, the ones who lose are, again, women who are victims of violence. All women who are victims of violence.